only have one part. So it's lesson 11. So Ivan, you said 40 hours for quality assurance, and that's about out of how many total? So 40 hours out of what amount of the total project was that? Out of 270? Okay, so roughly a sixth or a seventh of the project for quality assurance. Okay. So 15 to 20% roughly. I actually can show, I've got a few, these are some old projects I did quite a while ago. But we can actually look at here are my timesheets for these. So I build these projects hourly, so I kept timesheets. So here was one, if I take off the, so the total for the project was 187 hours to do this. And the testing phase of that in this case was 27. So this one was fairly small. Again, about 15% of the time was the quality assurance, the test, debug, etc. So around 15% on this project. And on this one, this was a much bigger project. So the total hours here, 1,072 hours. And the testing was 76. So less. This was under 10%, which was quite low, to be honest. So 15 to 20% is typically more realistic, I would suggest. So those were a couple of testing budgets for some real projects that I did. I'm going to pause the recording in a minute. I'm going to show you another quick video. I think actually instead of me playing it, I'm just going to suggest that you just watch the video. You can skip the first 5 minutes 40. So start at 5:40. I think it's 11 minutes in total. You're only watching about 5 minutes of it. So what I want you to do is watch the second half of the video. And what you're looking for is what factors or techniques are mentioned that you hadn't thought of before. So thinking about the things we've already got in our discussion board thread here. Okay, so this was your initial kind of thoughts around quality assurance. And Hung mentioned as well, yeah, trying different approach, define features and bugs. So I put another discussion question in here, which is this lesson 11 quality assurance. So one other thread. So I want you to reply in this thread, what had you not thought of that you think is a good idea or is important? So reply in the other thread. I'm going to just stop the recording and pause my screen share. Watch the video for 5 minutes. So we'll come back at about 10:30. So about 5 minutes to watch the video, 5 minutes to respond to the message thread. And we'll kind of look at what you have to say and have a little conversation around this in 10 minutes. Just resume. Okay, so let's look at some of your takeaways. Okay, so Nick talked about future-proofing your application. Yes, this was, most of you are probably too young to really remember the whole Y2K hysteria. But future-proofing, absolutely. So thinking not only what will work today, but what's going to work years from now if our app is successful. Using ESLint for unit testing, that's a great idea as well, Nick. Thanks. Maria likes the 10-minute test plan. So test plans don't have to be complicated. And in fact, in the video, they give you quite a simple kind of template for how are we doing this? What are the components? What are the conditions? What are the outcomes? Rachel talks about having users with different levels of experience navigate, which is a great idea. If we just put our application in the hands of technically literate people who already know the application, that's not going to give us an accurate representation as to our actual user or customer base who are actually going to be using the application. Maggie talks about functional and black box testing. So using test cases with summary and descriptions. So black box testing, again, as they kind of mentioned in the video, and Emily liked that as well. So that's really about end users who don't have any technical knowledge, that they don't need to know, our app is a black box, meaning the user doesn't really know what goes on inside it, and they don't need to in order to test the functionality as well as the usability. So those two things, functional and usability testing, would be in black box testing. They also talked about white box testing, which we can talk about a bit. So Young talked about ad hoc testing, right? So finding errors that automated tests can't always simulate everything. And Rebecca mentioned, testing with expected results in mind. So what do we expect to happen? What should happen when a user of this type performs this action, right? And does the program meet expectations or not? Did anybody catch? Just want to talk about black box and white box testing. Did anybody happen to note what that description of white box testing is? How is it different from black box testing? So black box testing was done by users with little to no technical knowledge or understanding. So Maggie says, it's a type of developer testing. Right? Maria says black box, there's no code access. So what kinds of tests would fall under white box testing? If functional and usability tests would be black box. Yes, could be design testing. Yep. A couple other really common kinds of tests, one of which we've done before. So database testing, so integration testing. Right, testing how our application works with other components. That would include in database, any other APIs, third-party components or services that our own application talks to. So that would be white box testing. And what's the other kind of testing that we actually did last semester in .NET? Method testing or unit testing. So that's not going to be available to end users or test customers. What unit testing is going to have to be done either by developers or members of the quality assurance team who have access to our code. As well, yes, Camilo, absolutely. So security testing as well. We're going to want our QA team to try to breach the application and use some of the known tricks, things like SQL injection, cross-site scripting attacks, checking for SSL leaks, all of those things, all of that's going to be absolutely white box testing. Okay, good answers. So as you are approaching our deadline of in 2 weeks, if your site is coming along well, then this should be something that maybe one or two of the group members of your group should be looking at doing some of these kinds of tests, both the things we've listed here, as well as some of the items you listed in the other thread. Okay, so you can use these two discussion threads in the forum to think about, okay, how how do we test our app and make sure that it's kind of robust and ready to show to our client in a couple weeks. And it also talks about usability for catching problems and letting the developer focus on building. Okay. Thanks, Hung, for that as well. So I'm going to just point out a few other resources, and then we'll wrap up for today. Now, Nick mentioned this one earlier, and that was you need a way to track bugs. So there are a few tools here that I'm going to show you. Some are free, some are paid. So there's a few ways you can do this. So Bugzilla is a Mozilla project, the creators of Firefox. So this is a free online bug tracker. So you can create your own Bugzilla site for your team, for example. So we can add a bug. You can sign in with GitHub, which I will do. So you can say, I'm going to enter a bug about Firefox. Right, so you can see previous bugs, say my issue is not listed, and you can file a bug report. So here's my version. This is what I did to create the error. This is what happened. This is what should have happened. I can upload a screenshot or even record a video, right? And it will get added to the list. So then it's like your own ticketing system. Right? You can track it, you can assign it to people, you can attach new files, and have kind of a discussion. So this is free from Mozilla. It's one option. Similar ticketing system that's free is osticket.com. Now, these might be overkill for the purposes of our project that you only have 2 weeks left to do. But osticket, similar thing, an online ticketing system. That allows you to track and manage sort of a help desk. They've got a cloud-hosted version. I don't know that there's a demo here. Free for 30 days, whereas the Mozilla one is totally free. Two other ones I'll show you. This one is probably the best one, but it's expensive. It's called Bugherd. And what Bugherd does, it's pretty neat, is I'll just show you quickly how it works. If you're working in a bigger company, it might be worth this. So Bugherd is expensive. You get it free for 14 days, but it's actually $40 a month. So, not for the small developer, but your customer just installs a browser plugin and then they can pin spots on the screen and add notes to it. And you have access to those notes. A couple easy and free ways to manage bugs. I'll show you a couple other ones. One is GitHub, actually. So GitHub, if you're talking internally, GitHub has an issue tracker here. So you can create an issue, make a comment. You can actually link it to a particular branch as well. And you can track issues through GitHub. This would primarily be internal. Sorry, Emily, which app did you mean?
Gemma?
No, he's now looking after it. The original app was actually coded by several students.
Oh, cool.
Students here in the program. There was originally there was one web student, one computer programmer student, And now there's a number of other former students, and Sam is a graduate, and he's now taken over the management of it. But it was created, yes, as a research project here at the college.
That's really cool.
So using the issue tracker in GitHub is something you could do internally. The other thing you can do is simply use Freecam. So easy way to use Freecam is just use your task list. So let's see. So you could just create a task list for bug reporting. You can get access to your customer. So I think we had somewhere. Yeah, so here I created a quality assurance task list for this portal of the site. And we had some testers, and we could just log the issues here, rank them as priorities, assign them, and if we needed to attach a screenshot, we could do that here. And then as we progress through the testing, again, some other students did some QA work. Once bugs were fixed, then and pushed into production, we would just move them here and mark them as done. So we had the history. So if you're already working in Freecam to manage your tasks, that's the public website for it. Yes, Nick, that's the public website for the company. This dashboard was a .NET. It's a separate portal, but same company. Yes, that's the project. So we just use Freecam in terms of doing our debugging and our quality assurance, keeping track, and that way, as opposed to us just getting a pile of emails in our inbox, hey, this didn't work, and losing track. By adding them as tasks, again, we could track, what was to do, what were we working on, and when were things finished. And if we had to have conversation around a particular item, again, Freecam would allow us to do it. So, and we could attach file screenshots. I probably have a few bugs where we had to have some conversation around exactly what the problem was, and how to fix. Right, so this one, we had some back and forth dialogue. What login do we use? And we got it working on staging, but it's not working on production. But when we tagged it as a bug here. So Freecam is an easy and free way for you to potentially keep track of this quality assurance process. What are you testing? Give your client an easy way to report bugs, and you can easily see and stay on top of the progress as you fix those things. One other resource I'm just going to quickly open up here. So this is by developer, kind of talking about quality assurance a bit more, just giving you a bit more of a philosophy in an agile environment of what QA is. It's not a very long article, but I would recommend taking a look at it. And really what they're emphasizing is quality assurance. It's about progressive improvement. So the idea is quality assurance isn't just something we do once. We kind of finish our initial build, and before we launch our site, we just go and test everything, we give it the thumbs up, and then we put it into production. The idea is it's an ongoing process, and it really suggests it functions as a voice for the end user, which is reminding designers and developers that ultimately we're building products for people to use on an ongoing basis. So it talks about kind of this iterative nature that as our projects evolve, we're doing quality assurance on an ongoing basis. And part of it is using automated tests, and part of it is doing ad hoc tests. As So Young mentioned, right? We're finding new things, new ways to test and make sure our application is continually evolving. They don't sort of stay static. They really are organic. But part of that growth is making sure that as our applications grow and as we update them, that they continue to work well, or in fact work even better than they did before. So useful little article talking about how to deal with problems and some suggestions around managing this. I know, Rebecca, if you're stepping into a project manager role, this might be a really useful article for you to have a look at as you're starting your new role. So that is here. This some thoughts on QA. I'm going to add one other quick thing into the discussion that I don't know that anybody actually mentioned. I'm going to add one reply of my own as well. One other thing we should think about is performance testing. What do I mean by performance testing and why is it important? It's different from functional testing. What would performance testing be? Yeah, it's partly about speed. Yeah, how fast do operations run? So, something may work, the login works, but what if it takes 60 seconds to load the page? So speed is one part of performance testing. What would the other part be? So speed for an individual user is part of performance testing. Yeah, the other thing is really, Maggie says, the amount of usability at one time. So that would kind of be load testing, right? Just because our site works well with a single user, how well does it work if we have 1,000 users or 10,000 concurrent users? And there are load testing tools out there we can use that will simulate making, for example, thousands of concurrent requests. So not only should our performance testing test the speed for a single user, but we should be using some of those automation tools to look at what happens when we have large volumes of transactions or requests made simultaneously. So I'll maybe add that. So performance, so this would be both single user, speed, and load testing to simulate many different users. So we want to do really all of those things. All right. So that was just a very high level kind of view of quality assurance. We could have taken a deeper dive into it, but those are some things I think we touched on a lot of the things that I want you to think about as you're doing some testing and getting your application ready for your final presentation, as well as moving out into the work world where you'll be building paid applications for real. Any other questions or thoughts around quality assurance before we go today? I'll end with one closing thought, but I'll just open up the floor before we do that. I do that. All right, my closing thought for today is that quality assurance is a really highly underrated entry into, not just entry, but there are a lot of career options. And we think about, hey, I want to design, I want to be a developer. Now, these aren't all, I guess some of these are manufacturing. Maybe we should. Let's see. Okay. Yes, it is very underrated, and this probably isn't the right for software testing. Software quality assurance. They should be looking at that. It doesn't necessarily need a lot of math. It depends. But this is a highly underrated opportunity. Here's like a software while they're looking for experience. But not only can this help make you a better designer and better developer, but if you're, it's an underrated place to look for work. But by learning how applications are tested, it's going to help you be a better designer and be a better developer. So we've actually had a number of students find work in this area. So something like this, test automation. Now, this may not be an entry-level position. Okay, so they want 5 years experience in this particular job. But it's something that I wouldn't rule out. Quality assurance may not seem like the most exciting area, but there are a lot of opportunities, and it's certainly going to help you build your skill set. Nick, in my experience, no, it's not becoming less popular. It's very popular in large-scale enterprise. Okay, big organizations, still a lot of them, government, finance. You'll find if you're interested in .NET, that's a really good, those are good places to look for work. Banks, insurance companies, companies in finance or investing, as well as government. You'll find lots and lots of .NET there.